the spots aren't dimmable. I'd say dim them halfway. See what happens. Or maybe just cut them off first. We'll see. This is a really sensitive group back here, Yeah, see, isn't that good? All right.
Yeah, that's good.
All right. Okay, welcome. Can you hear me? And Dorothea, I want you to know this is multi-directional. You see it picks up over here and here. Thank you, TJ. We used to have a microphone that people would go over and talk like this, and they go the big thing over here, and you wouldn't hear them, so that's great. Anyway, my name is Gary Hunter, and welcome to now it got dark, the annual poetry reading of the Wordkeepers. Wordkeepers, isn't that a great name? Wordkeepers has a kind of secret society to it. Anyway, I asked some of the older Wordkeepers back there where it originated. No one remembers. I mean, there's such a young group, you think, they would have remembered, so it's surprising. Thanks to TJ, who you just saw dealing with the lights, for helping to put on this event. Thank you to the Rancho Mirage Public Library for not just hosting this event, but supporting our weekly Wordkeepers class for many years. Today is really a tribute to our beloved teacher, Dorothea, right here in front. She is the poet laureate, the longtime poet laureate of Rancho Mirage, and she has guided us through the ins and outs of good poetry for many, many years with her 70-plus years of poetic experience. Is that all right to say that, 70-plus? Okay. And especially the masterful way she's helped develop each one of us, our individual voices, which is something you'll notice this afternoon, 11 unique styles of expression. Okay. Picture yourself at night in a circle around a campfire. Someone stands up and starts speaking. In the listening, you'll hear a story, maybe passion or pain, humor or wonder. You may not catch the way it's phrased, the specific choice of words, and how they're woven. And you probably shouldn't. In the narrative of a moment that's well written, a story comes to life. That's poetry. So the first poem I'd like to read, sort of preempting the afternoon, is a poem by Dorothea, which she asked me to read. It's from an anthology called Finding What Is Last from 25 years ago. And this particular poem is so it's timeless. It was timeless it was appropriate back then. It's definitely a topic of consideration now, and certainly, unfortunately, will go into the future. So I'll read it. Homeless. Whose mother's son lies there, sheltered by the arch of a flaking door, his head cradled on a bed of rags? Whose mother's son is this, bracing his soul against the scorn, his dignity harbored from the cold by plastic sheets or by his own indifference? A leper with his cover torn. The nightstick is his foe, the cold, the rain, the apathy, reviled by those who glimpse him on their way to finer streets, distant from the rotting smell of poverty. Whose mother's son is this, fueling his pain with brown-bagged heat, voiding his senses of four-letter words like hope, hiding inside his own abandoned body. Death imitating life in a cardboard camp. Somewhere, a mother mourns. Her torch quivers in her hand, her bronze face streaked with tears, and on her heart, for all the world to see, her promise, give me the wretched masses. And now, above her head, where eagles soared, vultures wait. Thank you, Dorothea. Now I'd like to introduce another poet that's not currently part of the group, but she was in this group. She is a dear friend of Dorothea's, and she's sitting next to her right now. She's blossomed over the years and just became the first poet laureate of Palm Desert. Congratulations, Lori Davis. And would you like to read?
This feels like such a full circle moment here. It's quite moving. I can't wait to hear everybody's poems. 25 years ago, we would meet in it was the old library at the beginning. This was a poem written for the occasion of Palm Desert's 50th anniversary. And I don't really think you would need to live in Palm Desert to sort of recognize some of the parts of it. It's more a desert poem. City of warmth and light. Silver shimmers outline the fronds of our tallest palms as the desert sun makes its initial tilt towards winter. And Mount San Jacinto stands bedecked in titanium white, as it does today, until the wildflowers fully hyperbolize our springtime experience. Crispy paper petals of the whispering bells, the tuberosas nestled in unassertive shades of sand, a tender lavendering of the smoke tree, a hummingbird perched on the red torch of an ocotillo. Pale yellow sky holds a cotton ball cloud above the Santa Rosas, closer to paradise than anything otherwise. What stays the same is the variation in every day. We are invited to live parts of our lives without portion. If only nature wrote fiction. Shade forms in the furrows of the little San Bernardinos. Art accumulates on corners and medians about the city. We are aware of the extremes and all the dusty in-betweens. As long-timers, full-timers, part-timers, and weekenders, we have our acclamations. Life here makes it easier to fathom and admire majesty, our own and in others. Another day, and the brazen sun spontaneously adjusts, instructs the mountains when to blush and pewter. Millions of years have led to this air and color. If we temporarily leave for the lure of an oceanside, a ski slope, or skyscrapers, the draw to return is real. A heart knows when it has arrived home once again. The sun's gone down, but the heat doesn't care. The sky turns a faded shade of lapis, then aquas, before it navies, into a color too elusive for accurate human description. The desert night quiets and composes itself. Cassiopeia owns her fixed wide sky place, and the marbled moon releases its wash of radiance across the creosote and us. Thank you very much.
Lori, was the lighting a little bit strange up here? Yeah, I hope you guys... Oh, okay. All right. Now for the Wordkeepers. All right, for some reason I chose two of my three poems were sort of whimsical, so just go along with them. I am a middle-aged push broom. A few months ago, leaning my back against a tree in the backyard, I saw their new blower in action. With a mighty gust of breath around the pool and patio, it chased every leaf away in a billow of dust. So powerful there was nothing left for a bristle to catch. Since that day, they've propped my long-speared handle and healthy green hackles against the garage shed. Because I'm not yet ready to retire, I stand extra straight, straining to catch an eye. Except during garage sales, when I try to fall over and disappear, so I don't hear, "Honey, what about this old broom?" But if she does find me, I hope he says, "Let's keep him for now. Never know when he might come in handy." And for my next quirky poem, A Sunday Bowl of Blueberries. Just like people, the interesting thing about blueberries are the wide variety of size and the blend of sweet and tart. Kind of reminds me of a class reunion I went to, with classmates every shape of plump and wrinkled, a few of astonishing taste, others lingering sour on the tongue. But then again, they're just blueberries. I could have eaten a banana, and this poem would probably have been about large apes that talk and do other foolish things. And my last one is a little deeper. I've read it here before, so you may have heard it. My husband Joe and I took a trip to China 13 or 14 years ago, and this poem, it actually happened. Selling fans in old Shanghai. We exit the museum, and she approaches. Hair snowy white, whipping back and forth in a shifting breeze. Eyes clear as empty sky. Face the color of moist clay. Skin cracked like some emperor's porcelain. She bends over what looks to be a vase of chopsticks, pulls out a pair, and spreads them to reveal a smiling panda fan, and waves it rapidly in my face. Well, I reach over and with matching energy, use my program to fan her face. She wraps my knuckles with her merchandise and smiles with both teeth. I peck her cheek, slip her 10 yuan, and turn to leave with my trinket. That's when she grabs my arm and pulls me close, lays her head on my shoulder, and holds me tight. I relax and give her all the time she needs because I don't want to let go either. Thank you. And next up we have Bernard.
Yeah, it seemed like a long journey, didn't it? Good afternoon, I'm Bernard Sergel. 14 years ago, at the age of 85, I wandered into Dorothea's poetry class, and it changed my life. At the conclusion of my reading this afternoon, I hope you concur that her labors to turn me into a poet were not spent in vain. That said, my first read today is titled, "The Heart Writes with Indelible Ink." No matter how long you live, no matter who you love next, no matter where you are, you can always go where she, seated on the ground, her back against the tree, you sprawled out on the grass, your head nestled in her lap. Lift your head instinctively, and just before your lips touch, her breath takes yours away. Some memories live an entire lifetime, even when you return to the present. Your place at the head of the family table, your wife in the kitchen cooking dinner, even then. My next read is titled, Oh Say Can You See? Oh say can you see the biblical Samson in me, ready to down in my temple of fear, my pillars of fright when they challenge my life. The Don Quixote in me, my impossible dreamer, who argues with absurdity, clashes with conceit, jousts with jealousy. The Cyrano de Bergerac in me, my romantic swordsman, who composes poetry to celebrate my life as he duels with death to delay my demise. And in my clear blue sky, the cirrus cloud in me, whose insight, accrued from thousands of mistakes, when life demands serenity, I stand in the shade. And my final read is titled, One Day. The day I leave you, I may linger as rain lingers, patiently sculpting a mountain, or I may silently disappear like a rainbow, or I may leave the way darkness suddenly descends at the onset of a thunderstorm. And on that day, I will be leaving your spring with its scent of fresh cut grass. And on that day, I will be leaving your summer, a garden of passion flowers. And on that day, I will be leaving your sun, the ways you let it shine on me. And on that day, the thousands of times I embraced you so tight, it etched the lovely lines that line your face. Thank you very much.
So first of all, thank you for everybody for coming today, and hopefully we'll give you something to think about. That's always a welcome. I'm Catherine Stanley, and my background is basically in journalism, playwriting, and screenwriting, so everything is a story to me, so I'm a narrative poet. And actually, my first poem kind of tells you what I think about words. I love two things in my life other than my family and friends, and that is music and the power of words. So I'm writing about the last one. And the Wordkeepers. And all these fine people behind me. My affair with words. Words that soar above an orchestra, stir all imagination until blending softly into harmonic thought. Words that dance delicately between religion and philosophy, speaking truths. Words that accessorize a sentence, models and haute couture, strutting and swaying down verbal runways. Words that stun the reader, causing an abrupt revelation of ideas. Words that soothe and comfort a troubled soul when tears evaporate onto paper. Words that move me until there's nothing left but silence. Thank you. and this is taking you in a different direction of your imagination. Swan Song of Luzon. An old woman lowered herself slowly at Geneva's edge to reminisce. Her veined legs, now swollen with age, dangled in the water. Lovers strolled past, lost in heartfelt conversations, blended into Swiss, German, French. She was young once. She believed in those things. The swans are still here, she smiled, gliding past in circuitous patterns, small white flotillas, commanding the cold alpine lake. They swim in pairs mostly, arched necks, embracing one another in heart-like shapes. A feathered valentine floating above the waves, she thought, devoted to each other for life. She was young once. She believed in those things. Thank you. A family album. I never knew her. She arrived alone to escape the troubles, a gentle word for famine, to cling terrified at a ship's rail, through brackish waters, toward a strange new land. Harsh, unforgiving land, riled with pandemic, punctuating the end of the Great War that left mourners bereft in its wake. Felling tears turned quietly into headstones. I hear these stories, I study pictures, faded and cracked, to understand her strength, her resolve, and wonder who will read the pages of our lives. What will they say of us when the album is closed? Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Maureen Doherty. I have been a sometime resident of the desert for more than 30 years, but a lifetime resident of Ireland where I have my permanent home. I came to poetry in retirement when I was reflecting, as we tend to, on life and work. I serendipitously came across Dorothea, Poet Laureate of our library, and her merry band of poets. And they kindly gave me the benefit of their listening ears. My first poem tells why I write poetry. Why I write poetry. Because in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God. Because words are but imagined things we use to reason with our fate. Because on my watch I heard the siren's song, and the trickster's charm kept jamming in my ears. Because my soul needed time to think, and my prose was prone to preach. Poetry became the word mill that blitzed the bones of my contention. A second sight to guide my trafficked soul wearily back home. Because the poet longs for an epiphany, a gist of words to untangle the yarn of memory, a mouthpiece that sings its logic in a minor key, a way of telling that swaddles heartache in a cloth of ease, a knowingness of gnarly things that tells the story slant. Because the poem is a chameleon that hides its meaning in a turn of phrase. The first draft is the pupa, the chrysalis that presages the butterfly. Now, my second poem is about a more serious... Moving along. So my second poem is about a more serious topic, and it begins with an epigram by E.M. Kieran, who is of the opinion that the two most interesting things in life are metaphysics and gossip. The poem's title, Tea and Talk. I penned this poem with the question to be answered in the fullness of time, for I would dearly like to know what will happen to the gossipy talk, beloved of my generation, when these AI operatives surpass our modest wit. I fear a future world will not know that back in our day, a little pot of tea brewed a ceremony of talk, small talk, all talk about truths more animated than somber facts. Will history simply say those tete-a-tete were a derangement of our time? An existential ache we relieved by searching amongst the leafy dregs for portents of some future fate. But my question for generations yet to come is not if AI won the day, or if those alexithymic machines were granted personhood. I just want to know, did Alexa ever learn to suffer or ease the pain of human isolation? So I finish with the most profound topic of all, where to bury the remains. In a sacred place, when my worldly life is o'er, bury my body in the barony of Burren, in the graveyard of Kirchamrua, close by the abbey ruins of Sancta Maria de Petra Fertili, St. Mary of the Fertile Rock, where light chases shadow across mountainy grey limestone, sweeps between gentian skies and the lush green valley floor. Carry my remains along the green roads of Burren, hedged in Diora Day, wild fuchsia purple tears of God. Pass on by the great cliffs of Moher and the sea crashing at Fanor. Pause by the tomb of Poulnabrone, where the ancestors sleep. At day's end, lay me down to rest amongst my own. Thank you.
Thank you all for being here this afternoon. My name is Nick Stone. My wife and I spend 3 months here in the desert every year. 8 years ago, exactly, I stumbled into a Wordkeepers meeting by mistake, not realizing that it's for members only. But Dorothea invited me to stay, and since then, the Wordkeepers have been an important part of my life. The rest of the year, I live on a small island off the coast of Maine, and have been involved with the ocean all my life, and many of my poems are about the sea. A little background on the first one of these I'll read. Between college and law school, I spent 4 years doing search and rescue in the North Atlantic. This poem is the story of one of those rescues. It's called Fair Thanks. We're homeward bound from Newfoundland after winter months at sea. Boston 1,000 miles away, if the weather holds. 6 hours later, shortwave radio erupts. Mayday, mayday, Scalloper, Dragger, Anne Marie, position mid-Grand Banks. 240 miles in the opposite direction. Coast Guard Search and Rescue, Boston, also heard their call. Radios to us. You're the nearest. Turn around. We turn our ship, 120 men aboard. She shudders, crashing through each wave into the building storm. 11 hours later, our radar spots the Anne Marie. Their crew radios in French. The water is rising in the bilge. Our engines stopped. Bilge pumps failed. In 2 hours, we'll go down. We launch a lifeboat, rescue pumps and crew aboard. Hours later, bilge pump dry. Leak patched well enough to get them home. Their engine running strong. Our men prepare to leave. Mittens caked in ice. Their crew heaves us their thanks. 2 bags, 50 pounds of scallops each. I found that some of my experience at sea have stayed with me for a very long time. My next poem is about that. It's called Dawn Watch. I often dream from 4 to 8, the navigator's watch, of taking sights on waning stars to find us on that endless writhing sea. Braced against the roll and pitch, my sextant wiped of salty spray, I search the sky for breaks in clouds, locate 3 stars, and pin us on my ocean chart. In other dreams, storm clouds obscure the stars, or too late, I become aware I missed a crucial step. In those nightmares, I jerk awake, await the shuddering crash. The last poem I'll read isn't about the sea. It's about an even more universal experience, the tricks time plays on us as we age. It's called Time's Magic. It seems to take forever just to tie my shoes, reach a human being on the phone, find a pair of sneakers that will fit, get to checkout at the grocery store, and yet, I blink an eye, that tank of gas is gone. Cash from the ATM is spent. Fast as my childhood disappeared, my children reached middle age. My career seems never was. What is that just flashed by, looking like a life? Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Welcome. Short person here. Let me see. Okay, can y'all hear? Awesome. Bring it down more. Please. Let me break. Okay. So my name is Maureen Mercury, And I write poetry because, as a genre, anything you think, feel, experience, observe is grist for the mill. And you will see that by the 3 different kinds of poems that I'll present today. Thank you, Dorothea. How many people remember wearing masks for COVID? Yeah, show of hands? Okay. At the zoo in the time of COVID, the emu knew something was wrong. The closer she got, the more her eyes squinted curious. Used to laughing humans, weird aliens stood beyond the fence, murmuring, expressionless, dark glasses hiding eye holes, not eating, not drinking, no smiling mouths, no happy teeth. Emu scanned the zoo, but saw no mothership. Okay. The next one is the Redwood Grove at Henry Cowell State Park, which is located right outside of Scotts Valley in Santa Cruz County. Eco tour buses spewing diesel disgorge marching hordes in thick-soled shoes, fresh from designer outlets. Plastic water bottles tucked in safari pockets, they smile and selfie, missing tall trees, and chatting and munching and marching and crunching. The stoic trees of Redwood Grove wince and watch. People off leash in the forest. And my last poem, I wrote in my very first class 8 years ago with Dorothea. And it happens to be my favorite. How weird is that? Okay. Death in Tombstone. Too large for my small hand, I wore the blood ruby every day that summer, pretending not to notice love's bitter harvest trapped in the stone. When it got left on a wash basin in Tombstone, we were so over anyway, it was aces and eights. I told him, love never dies a natural death. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Ruth Hill, and I'm a retired hospice nurse. I became enamored with poetry when my husband died 30 years ago. It helped me with my grief. 8 years ago, I made a commitment to write weekly for CV Weekly about cannabis. And I needed to find some way to discipline myself because I never wrote like this. I came across Dorothea's Wordkeepers. Every week, Dorothea makes us write a poem. That's discipline for you. You can use that no matter what kind of writing you're doing. So these critics behind me led me to create accomplished poems. My first poem is a personification poem. This is when the poem takes the voice of an inanimate object. For instance, if I want to write, the poem is about that red shirt over there, the red shirt is the voice. Or if the poem is about cancer, cancer becomes the voice. This poem is titled The Bench on Adams Street. Anchored to a 50-pound weight, I remain among the clover and dandelions. Weathered from scorching heat, all come for respite on my graffiti seat. Bobby visits every day after being kicked out by his mom. He tells me secrets, smokes pot, gives a pine scent to the air. Jimmy leaves sticky stuff under my seat, carves crevices deep in my seat. Ted brings his slobbering Maltipoo, who leaves gifts at my feet. One day, Peter fell asleep after feeding the pigeons garlic bread. People in uniforms came to take him away. He never visits anymore. This poem is about an event that occurred in my childhood in the 40s. Uncle Frank showed up one autumn day. It was that time of year when leaves silently glittered the ground, building mounds of dried detritus we kids jumped into all day. He used a controlled burn, the time of year when sickles, rakes, and town sirens announcing fires and disasters. The air was crisp and cool. Smells of burning leaves clung to your nostrils. Chapstick was in your pocket. I remember sudden panic hollowed through his screams as he waved his t-shirt, chasing a line of flames, advancing towards my aunt's house. I remember in the aftermath when Mom and Uncle Frank settled in the kitchen on that moonless night, attempted to console each other. I remember his scorched eyebrows and ears, smoldering shoes, torn trousers tinged black. I remember Mom holding her beet red face from exhaustion in her hands, afraid to see the sorrow mirrored on our faces. "I'm all right, sis," he said sheepishly. Regret hollowed out his face, gratified to God that his wounds took only his skin and not his life. And my last poem is The Mystery Woman. Wrapped in a cardboard box with a gray ribbon was a portrait of a Renaissance woman. Her face was mesmerizing, surrounded in black. My gaze lingered on her downcast eyes, her ruby lipstick, wondering who was this woman perfectly poised on a wooden chair. I rewrapped the portrait back into the box. Several days later, my daughter calls from her year-long sabbatical in Peru with her students. "Happy birthday, Mom. Did you get my gift?" Shamefully, I dashed toward the box to capture my daughter's face I so readily dismissed. Thank you for listening.
This poor microphone's been twisted in every different direction. I'm Glenn Vecchione, and I've been writing poetry for 40 years, mostly in isolation. So it was wonderful when I moved to the desert to discover, or rather be invited into Dorothea's group, where every Wednesday afternoon for the past 2 years I joined my poet family to share and receive poetry. So thank you for that, Dorothea. So I'm going to read 3 poems, all of which were written under Dorothea's watch. And the first one is called Genesis, Beginning. And this is something called a list poem, because I wrote it as a list, like a laundry list or shopping list, just a list of, not quite items, not exactly like a list, but very short lines, and each line is only 4 syllables. So, Genesis. And heck, I'm going to dedicate this poem to you, because beginning for you. Genesis. Inside this stone, there lives a seed, beneath which grows a root that grips the broken earth to make its own, but not a stone. Instead, a tree within a wood, and from this wood flies up a wish, a prayer for rain that falls on stones, and so the earth becomes a green within a green, and from this green churns up the sea that bears the fish, that takes the hook to feed the man who makes his home upon the sea, upon the green, upon the stone. So these next 2 poems are memory poems, one a pleasant memory and the other not so much. The first one is the not so much memory. It's called A Burning. Horseplay mornings in the switchyard after fathers left for work and mothers talked on telephones. The usual stuff, a smoke, a magazine. Then that time the Cabrini twins brought kerosene and Coke bottles and said we could make bombs to kill rats. But the rag went up with the first splash, and the smaller twin erupted in a whoosh, like wind and not like wind. A blast of heat against our faces flapped his arms in a crazy dance before he collapsed, clothes burned off him, save for the shoes. And screams brought housewives from kitchens who galloped towards us in summer dresses like clumsy angels. We abandoned those twins now spalled by soot, the stench of it hanging for months before it made a home in my nose. But the fire came back years later, jets of it, in the swamps of Kinsa, the red heart of flame called Kwanduk, the frantic shrieks of mothers at Milai, served up by Reuters each evening at 5 p.m., but this time, no screams, no smell, no rescue. So this is a poem about something that's, I think, familiar to most of us of a certain age, although they don't quite look like this anymore. So this is kind of a retro version of something called a gumball machine. And you can think of this poem as the rantings of a very precocious 14-year-old boy. Gumball machine. You could be a Martian, all brain, no sex, nesting the eggs of cruel ideas. Your words, cue ball white and clown yellow. Your heart, a galvanized crank slotted for coins. You attract children your own size, then cheat them, paying out in damaged goods to invite the poking of fingers into your filthy claptrap, you junk bulb schnorrer, you slathered in rat enamel, you toggle bordered bladderwort of a black box under the blue eye of a shopkeeper who says finally, I have nothing to do with it. So there's the first lesson, little friends. You pays your nickel.
We all have to adjust, don't we? There we are. Good afternoon. Boy, it's so wonderful to see that you all came out to us. I appreciate that. And I hope you're enjoying this afternoon. For 28 years, my name is Joanne Gill. Probably a good thing I share that with you. For 28 years, I taught in Palm Springs Unified School District. And then at that same period, I taught 10 years at Cal State San Bernardino Palm Desert campus. I retired early in 2003 and began traveling the world, writing both prose and poetry about my experiences. In 2015, I met Dorothea and joined Wordkeepers. Through her guidance and her expressions and her corrections, I have honed my writing skills and expanded my love of poetry. Thank you, Dorothea. Close to my heart. The first poem I'll share with you today is honoring my older sister, Susie. She established the first library at an Indian reservation in Northern California. And she also opened her home to boys who needed to have a safe place. Tribal Passage. Lying on a buffalo skin within the pine casket, my sister embraced Northern California Pomo Native American culture. Ancient drums and rattles guide the way. People sing her praises, share stories to honor her. The tribe welcomes me, accepts my tears and regrets, rejoices with laughter of childhood memories. Bowing my head, I silently whisper to her the anger and resentment toward our stepfather that has poisoned my being. Standing in line, I dip my hand, gathering tobacco leaves within the soft leather bag. I open my clenched fist, sprinkle the dried plants into an abalone shell. Flames flicker. Smoke transfers my thoughts to my sister's spirit. She will carry them to the Creator, healing my mind and soul. A couple of weeks ago, the New York Times had a special article regarding cicadas. It has been told, we don't know whether it's going to happen yet or not, foretold, I should say, that this year in the Midwest and the southeastern part of the United States, they're going to have a horde of cicadas that they have not seen since 1803. Well, their cicadas are much bigger than ours here on the West Coast. You know, you've all seen them in the springtime. They're the ones that go bzzz all the time. Well, they're really not making that sound with their mouths, but actually rumbling it from their bodies. So I have a true story that happened to me last spring. 2 cicadas. 2 cicadas cavort on the car hood. Engine rumbles, vibrations throb. They quickly strum their timbal tissue, back and forth to hum and buzz, swaying to music they simply make, briefly together in a timeless manner. Without a wave of a wing, they separate, uncommitted. She lays eggs in the ground. He searches, finds new lovers. My third poem to share with you this afternoon is one that you may be familiar with because it's part of an anthology we Wordkeepers had published in 2019 for the first printing. Desert Memorial Park, April 26, 2001. Leathernecks at attention, 7 Marines stand tall, rifles grasped firmly as the bugler plays the mournful song. The captain's foghorn voice shouts, "Ready, aim, fire, fire, fire." 3 times 7 blasts against my wounded ears, strikes my fragile soul, my tearful heart shatters, cracks as broken glass. Honoring my husband, the folded flag is lifted high. Full metal jackets tucked deeply inside. 21 spent cartridges given to me, his loving wife. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Tom Robertson. I've been part of Wordkeepers for about 7 years. And one of the first things I remember Dorothea sharing with us, she said, if you want your poetry to sound authentic, if you want to be able to connect with the reader or the listener, write about things you know about. So that's what I do. I write about things I know about. And the first thing I know about is growing up on Palm Springs Section 14 on the Agua Caliente Indian Reservation. And this was a Section 14 before the high-end condos and the casinos and the restaurants. This was a Section 14 of dirt roads, tar paper shacks, where Indian Canyon was the dividing line between poverty and prosperity. So let me begin with the poem, Saturdays at the Stump. On those summer Saturday nights in 1955, Herbert Carter, a black man from Bessemer, Alabama, took 15-year-old me to the stump. Took me to the spot where the folk south of Lacey Road crowded in, singing, shouting, stomping, and being real. That shotgun shack of nails, wood, and tar paper, set next to a big cottonwood stump, was all about drinking, dancing, and fighting to the sounds of Delta blues streaming from the house band. They came in shiny Detroit steel, big men with rough hands and hard faces, styling in their brims and Stacey Adams, wearing women with big hair and low expectations on their arms. They squeezed into that tin-roofed tar paper shack where cigarette smoke rolled like blue fog, the air thick with the smells of fried fish, yesterday's beer, and perfume bought by the jug. It had a life, a beating heart of its own, the rolling thrum of Porkchop Parker's Gibson, wailing like a witness to every slur, every pain, every broken promise. It was a place to fight over a good woman or a sorry man, a place to drink cheap gin till a wedding vow became merely a suggestion, a place where all of them, cesspool diggers, maids, and gardeners, could forget for a bit they were selling their lives by the hour. Another thing that I know about is being a firefighter. I had a 32-year career with City of Palm Springs Fire Department. So this poem is a little bit about that career. Kitchen table stories. Storytellers taught me to be a firefighter. They spoke of courage, commitment, and the knowing that we, the brotherhood, were in each other's care. My lessons were not given as lectures in some college hall. They were given around the firehouse kitchen table in the form of stories. Stories that could make you feel the searing breath of a backdraft as it blew past you while locked into a 35 extension ladder. Stories that could make you believe you were there, right there, when ceilings collapsed and searches for bodies were made on hands and knees in rooms made cave dark by smoke. Stories of sadness and how the chlorine-scented body of a child slowly becomes colder in your hands, even as small lungs are filled with your own warm breath. Stories that telegraph straight to your being, the pride of courage, the stain of cowardice, and the sanctity of the brotherhood to which I belong. Now here's one I know you can all relate to, at least a high percentage. This is titled, There Are Serious Problems in the Neighborhood. There they sit in a cloud of elitist entitlement, decked out in country club casual, showing golf course water lines on their sockless stems. They're looking for some place to park their ennui, pursed lips poised, to promote their own agenda, a hassle of homeowners out for blood. And so it begins, the monthly HOA meeting. While the Earth's polar ice caps melt at an alarming rate, pool number 3 is still too cold at 85 degrees. As the world's refugees and displaced person exceeds 60 million, a visitor's car was parked on the street overnight. While every day 1 billion people walk 6 kilometers for a drink of water, the water fountain on the 9th tee still flows too warm. Every 10 seconds, a child dies from hunger somewhere in the world, and the clubhouse restaurant is serving smaller portions. There are serious problems in the neighborhood. Thank you.
That is our show for today. The readings may be over, but the fun doesn't have to be. Stick around. You can mingle with us. There's cookies and coffee and water back there. There are books for sale, $10 each in the corner. Thank you all for coming, and please ask us anything you like. We'll all be around for a little while. All right? Thank you.
love.